What is up, you guys? It is Kiaja T, and welcome back for another cup of Key. Today's video is going to be about how I went from a place of depression and suicide into self-care and self-love and self-development and things like that. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So back in 2019, I was really sort of questioning myself. This was the year after I graduated high school. So, you know, of course, this is a big transformative time for a lot of people, for me too as well, obviously. So back in 2019, I was really questioning myself about who I wanted to be, who was I, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do with my life, you know, the normal questions that you ask when you're in that transition phase. So that went on into, y'all know, that went on into 2020. I was in college and I was trying to figure out, of course, still questioning what do I want to do, who do I want to be, what do I want my future life to look like, and things like that. And so in 2020, that was like a really big year for me. It was such a transformative year. In 2020, I started questioning like everything. I started seeing the world differently, seeing my perspective started to change about the world around me. And I can't say what exactly triggered it, I guess, with me searching for myself, I guess, you know. I started doing a whole lot of research, getting into spirituality, and I guess this is my moment, like, you know, that moment when kind of like dismantling everything. So yeah, and all the things that I used to think were important weren't anymore. Like none of it was important. Like school, jobs, a career, you know, all of this stuff. I just was like, why does this even matter? You know? And I was heavily questioning who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and why does this stuff matter? Why do people place so many anyway such importance? That's what I'm trying to say. Why do people place such importance on these things, these, you know? And so the biggest question that I remember asking myself was, what is my purpose? That was like the biggest. I just had to know. I just had to know. What is my purpose? I remember doing research. I was taking little quizzes that they have online. Yeah, I was one of those people. I was taking the little quizzes. I was reading articles. I was reading books. I was doing research. I needed to know. Okay, do you hear me? I had to know. Like, oh my God, this is it. Like, once I find this purpose, I can, you know, I can make it. Everything is gonna fall into place. Y'all see this little cut? I burned myself with some wax. So, that question plagued my mind day in and day out, day in and day out. And I remember asking myself, who am I? And I couldn't answer it, and that bothered me. It bothered me that I couldn't answer that question, and that sort of catapulted me, like, I gotta find this out. So, and during that time, of course, I'm still going to school. I had changed my major like 3 times. And I remember college just wasn't it. It wasn't giving me that uplifting feeling that it was supposed to give and things like that. And I remember talking to my mom and I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. I remember talking to my mom and I was like, I don't want to be here no more. I don't like it. I'm not happy. And I started seeing college as a scam. Now, I'm not trying to talk nobody out of going to college, but I started seeing it like it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not all the hype that it was made out to be. Really quick, guys, if you are enjoying this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I post a video. All right, I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go home, but I didn't want to be in college as well. At the time, I also had a roommate, and she was feeling the same things that I was feeling, so we was kind of like feeding into each other. It was really unhealthy. Like, we was laughing about it. I was sad. I was sad, and I didn't recognize the stages at that time, but I was slowly getting sadder and sadder. Like, I would write things. Y'all know, if you watch any of my previous videos, y'all know that I'm a writer, so I would write things that were like dark. I was writing dark stuff. I can post something that I wrote in my notes, but yeah, I was writing stuff, and so I was just in this really sort of transformative stage, and I was just, everything felt like it was just falling apart around me, and so it was like this pressure. I just felt like I was having so much pressure on my shoulders. Like, I didn't like it at school. I didn't want to come home because I was afraid I was going to get stuck. And then if I left school, then I was going to have to worry about debt, because I had been in college for like 2 years already. So, you know, once you get out, I mean, you got to start paying that stuff back. And I didn't have a job at the time. So it's like, how am I going to take on this debt? And then a part of me felt embarrassed, because like, I didn't want to feel embarrassed because I was dropping out of school. And so there was that. There was the debt. It was feeling embarrassed. I was questioning my faith heavily at the time. I mean, there was so much pressure going on at the time. And then going back home, and it was like I felt a pressure I felt this need to prove that I wouldn't be another statistic, especially coming from a low-income community. So it was a lot. It was a lot. So eventually, I dropped out of college. I did, and I moved back home. So at the time, I was also in a relationship. I ended up cutting that off. So you can imagine all of this stuff is going on at the same time. It was a lot. And so, yeah, I moved back home. And when I got back home, it hadn't really clicked for me yet that, like, I'm in the real world now. You know, so it hadn't really connected for me yet. But I moved back home, and at first when I got home, I was just, you know, laying around, eating, reading, reading, gaining weight. That should have been like that should have been the first thing that I noticed. But you know, when you're in the moment, you don't really notice these things. I was reading books that were dark and gory, and, you know, a whole lot of paranormal books. And you know, what you focus on expands. It started out, that sort of thing became, I was putting those thoughts in my mind because I was reading those types of books, and the characters in those books, I mean, now I'm looking back at it now, the characters in those books, none of those characters were happy. None of those characters were positive or uplifting. All of them were sad, had lived a sad existence, lived a sad life, and that sort of thing. So yeah, I wasn't taking care of my body. I was, because I didn't care. I didn't care. I would lay around all day in the dark. I would be laying around all day and the dark. And so during this time, I was still doing my research on like esoteric knowledge and things like that. So the universe, laws of the universe. I was trying to figure out, I have become interested. I was like submersive in this knowledge, trying to figure out like what is this? That was sort of the thing that took up my interest at the time. But at the same time, life had become so meaningless to me at that moment. I didn't see the point. And I didn't see the point of life. It was like, what's all this? This can't be it. You know what I'm saying? And eventually I started working. I started this travel job that we were doing merchandising and things. When that job ended, I ended up moving. Y'all can check out that video. I forget where it is. I think it's there. I'm moving to Florida, still experiencing these emotions, experiencing this depressive state, and so now it was it was end all be all. And I told y'all in my last video that I would show y'all the note that I had wrote, so I'm gonna include that somewhere over here. Yeah, I wrote that in my notes, and I remember I was laying down, still reading these dark books, still reading these books with all this gore and violence and death and all of this stuff. And I remember I don't remember the exact day, but I do remember calling the hotline. I remember calling that hotline. I hung up. I hung up. I hung up, and I also remember signing up for these like therapy sites and things like that. So it was like there were two sides of myself. It was like it was a war happening between the two sides of myself, and every time I think about this, I get emotional because it's like, wow, I pulled myself from that, And so there was like two sides of myself. That was butting heads. There was like the left side that was saying, I'm ready to give up. I'm tired of experiencing the same things, and I'm disgusted and sick with the world around me. But then it was the right side that was saying, is hoping and praying for something more. Like, this can't be all that's out here. There has to be something more that I'm not finding. So, I'm researching tirelessly, just looking for answers to the questions that I still don't have the answers to. And I'm like, there has to be an answer somewhere. And basically, I'm fighting to save myself at this point, whether I knew it or not. And so now the question is, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Which side is going to win? And I remember crying. Praying, like, and mind you, I didn't know what I was praying to at this moment, because I told you I was questioning my faith. No, actually, that's a lie. I remember I was crying and praying to my grandmother. My grandmother had died. This was earlier this year, 2022, I think. And so my grandmother, she died last year. And I remember crying and praying. I was like, Grandma, give me an answer, please. And I remember that night I was crying and I was praying, and I was like, Grandma, please, Like, show me it's real. Show me something that's real, something that's solid. And then after I did that, I went and got on Instagram, and it was this guy that I was following on Instagram. I had never really went on his page or anything like that, but that night he was on live. And I went on his live, and the first thing that I heard was, everything that you need is within you. And I was just like, oh my God, you know, I bust out crying. I broke out. I bust out crying right there. And so, like, as soon as I finished crying and saying, I need an answer, give me an answer, that's the first thing that I heard. And I took it, I ran with it, and I was like, okay, it's time to go. It's go time now. I have to do something, you know. So now here comes, what did I do to snatch myself from that edge? I wrote down 7 things for you guys, and I hope that these 7 things will help somebody somewhere one day, because they helped me. First things first, sacrifice. Now, I know don't nobody want to hear that. But in order to get where you want to go, you're going to have to give up something that's no longer working out for you. And so the first thing I did was I stopped reading those depressing books. I stopped reading them books that were doing nothing but keeping me in that low state. Did I stop reading books completely? No, I just replaced the books that were sad and depressive and violent. I replaced those with some more positive books. I remember I started reading books about strong women instead of these women who were weak and dependent on a man to, you know, save them from their past. I started reading books about women that were strong, warrior women who, you know, they built themselves up. They didn't rely on anyone else. So I stopped consuming that negative content. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you willing to give up in order to get to where you want to be? And I had to ask myself that. And so that was the first thing I gave up, was that negative content. I think that was one of the biggest things, because that's what I was consuming heavily at the time. So that's what I sacrificed. Another thing that helped me was I started saying affirmations. I started telling myself a different story. Did I believe it at the time? No. But did that matter? No. Yeah, I started telling myself a different story. At the time, I had really low self-esteem, and so I would stand in the mirror, look myself in the eyes, and say, you're beautiful, I am beautiful. Did I believe it at the time? No, I didn't believe it at all, but I said it because something had to work. Either I was gonna stay where I was, or I was gonna try something and hope that it stick, and that's just what it was. And affirmations just so happened to work out. I explained in another video how affirmations work. Go watch that one there. I also did some shadow work, some heavy shadow work, getting to know that part of myself that was murky and ugly, and those traits that I don't like to look at. So like envy, jealousy, all of that. Had to get to know all of the murky depths. Not steps, depths. That's what I meant to say. The other thing I did during this time was I went into isolation. Like, anything that wasn't conducive to, you know, helping me heal, I cut it out. I cut off people. I cut off old habits. I became my number 1 priority. My healing and my health became number 1. And if it wasn't helping me do that, it was gone. I started spending a lot of time in nature. I don't know what it was about nature, but I remember spending a lot of time, like I would go on walks. I would just go outside and breathe in the air. I would go touch trees. I would take my shoes off and walk outside. I would go to the park and lay in the middle of the ground and stare at the sky. I was out there. I was probably looking crazy in the middle of town, but I don't care. I was out there, and it helped. I don't know what it was about it, but it helped me. What else did I do? I started exercising. So moving my body, getting those endorphins and stuff, that I feel like that played a heavy, what's the word I'm looking for? Important. That played an important part in that, in the journey towards taking better care of myself. So you gotta start, you can't just do it on a spiritual level and a mental level. You have to do it on the physical level as well. And the last thing was just trial and error. I would read books about self-help, read books about self-care. I would, in those books, they had different techniques and things. I would try it. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't. I started following a lot more spiritual people who were, and I'm not talking about the people that were only talking about, positive love and light and things like that. Nah, they want my cup of tea. They want my cup of tea. I wanted the people who were talking about how it's not easy, it's not going to happen overnight, and it didn't. I didn't heal myself overnight, and it's not like healing is a one-way street. Like, the journey is forever. You're never going to stop healing. But that doesn't mean that you can't still live your life while you're healing. Like, I did go into a bit of a hermit mode, but I didn't stop living. I mean, my goal was to keep living. That's literally the whole point. But yeah, it was trial and error. I remember I would screenshot like Reddit posts. There was one in particular where a person was explaining how listless he felt. Nothing felt important. Nothing felt worth it. And that's how I was feeling. That's how I was feeling at the time. And the advice that person gave, the advice that was given to that person was that you have to try it even when in your mind you don't see why it's important. You got to try it anyway, because at the time, your thoughts, you're in a specific phase, you're in a specific state of mind. So anything that doesn't correlate with that state of mind is going to feel uncomfortable. It's not going to make sense, because that's not in the frame of mind that you're in. So you have to do it even when it doesn't make sense to you. It's not going to be logical. It's not going to make logical sense, but you just do it. And that was one of the biggest things for me. I'm like, why would I do this when I don't even care about it? Why would I do this when I don't even think it's going to work? But it's sacrifice. Sacrifice. It is trial and error. It is wanting something so bad that you're willing to try anything. And I wanted to see the version of myself that wasn't where I was. I wanted to see the version of myself that I knew I could be. So, yeah. And that is all that I have for you guys today. I told you guys that I would make this video. And so I did finally make it. I hope and I pray that this video will help somebody. I hope that it will help somebody somewhere someday. Alright, so thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I wish you all the best. More life.